And then
Yes.
honestly, as far as the racing stuff goes, the one thing that caught my attention, and I wasn't there at this point, I was watching on TV, was 450 main event. There was
Mm,
2 whoop pads back to back, which I love. The
yes.
first set of
Yep.
whoops was a huge run in. I don't know what the TV made it look like, but in real
Hmm.
life, I was looking at it and going, I've never seen that either. I mean, they had a
Hmm.
full blown bull turn,
Yep.
and it was a solid 150 feet until you got to the first whoop. And
Mm,
so what that means typically is that skimming will be the line. If skimming isn't always typically the line,
hmm.
it's definitely going to be now, because you can't have that big of a run into whoops and then think
To
that
slow
jumping's going to be
down and
faster.
yeah, it doesn't. It's not going to flow. It's going to upset you for the next section. And yeah, to me that seeing people try to hop through it, like going through there and qualifying, I was like, man, it looks so much slower. It really
Yeah.
did.
Yep. And guys still do it fast. Don't get me wrong. Like Webb still
Yeah,
does
yeah,
it very fast, but
for sure. But
it's going to be a section where the skimming is better. So that was the first thing
yes.
I'm like, all right, watch. So this will be a Sexton advantage type of track. And very first lap in Maine, it's Sexton in first, Webb in second. They get to the whoops. Sexton skims, Webb jumps. That's lap
Mm,
1, and you could just see 10 bike lengths between Sexton and Webb in that very first lap. And I
yep.
go, all right. In my head, I go, next lap, Webb's going to try and skim, because he just realized how much slower it was to jump.
Hmm.
Sure enough, lap 2, Webb tries to skim, equal distance gap, because he can't skim whoops as good as Sexton.
Hmm.
And as soon as lap 2 was over with, I was like, well, Sexton, unless he does something silly, this is going to be an easy Sexton win, just
Yeah.
based on that whoop section. I know the other rhythm, he was a little faster, but just on the whoop section alone, because the entire rest of the track after
Hmm.
long rhythm lane, so the Supercross triple, the little 2-2, and the
Yep.
off before the finish,
Yep.
Webb was probably faster through all that weird tight stuff.
I'm glad you said that because I feel like yeah, Webb was able to just maneuver his bike a little bit and feel a little bit more comfortable with that on off section before the finish, which I love those on off sections.
Yeah,
But
they need more of those.
yeah, they do. Going back a little bit, what do you think the disconnect is with Webb skimming the whoops compared to someone like a Sexton or a Mookie or an Eli? I feel like before he had the whole thing was, oh, KTMs are better at jumping through whoops. The steel chassis they've got a little bit more compliance. It feels better. It tracks straighter. He kind of had that to lean on, but now that he's on, Japanese bike, aluminum frame, what do you think is still the disconnect for Webb when it comes to skimming the whoops? Because that's a really big piece of real estate to give up on a track. You're 10 bike lengths. That's an eternity. That's a football field essentially. Every single lap. What do you think the disconnect is there with Webb?
It's just what you practice more. So, I mean, think about me. I can't jump whoops because I've never jumped whoops ever.
Mm,
I will skim at all costs no matter what. And there's some guys that are kind of like that. I think in the sport nowadays with the short whoop rule,
mhm.
you have to learn to adapt. And all of the top guys, even the ones like, let's say, Sexton, Tomac, Roxon, Jet, the guys that are high level skimmers, they're also very, very good at jumping. You have to be, or else you just wouldn't be able to be that competitive. I haven't spent enough time jumping. And you can tell that Webb hasn't spent enough time skimming.
Mm,
He's also shorter, so that's a disadvantage.
mhm.
I mean, that's probably a huge disadvantage. And then you will probably tailor your bike to whichever one you're better at also. So if Webb
Mhm.
likes to jump, then he's going to set his bike up so it's a little bit easier for him to jump. Same thing with Justin Cooper, right? Where a
Mm.
Roxon or a Tomac or their bikes might be set up a bit different so they can skim a little bit easier. Sexton's bike looked amazing skimming though. I mean, it just kind of sat in and it tracked, because
Mm.
those had some edges on them. You could definitely tell. That's why guys were going to the jump line.
Mhm.
And yeah, Sexton was killing him. Thrasher was hitting him really well in the 250 class as well.
Mhm.
He was probably the one guy that stood out as the best in them in the 250s. Haymaker was getting through him okay, but definitely getting a little far back at the end, and he would get those kicks side to
Yeah.
side a
I'm
little
glad
bit.
you mentioned that too, because I've noticed that with a few guys in the 250 class, but the Cowie riders, it's like when they get towards the end of the set, especially if there's some hooks and some chunks taken out, it's almost like their bikes are a bit more reactive. Like it's almost like they're going through, and it, obviously, like Mitch knows his bike, so say take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But
I
it
think it's
looks
just getting your weight back. I think it's just that little bit of, and every PC rider I can think of, that's kind of how they ride a little bit. They tend to get off the back of the bike in certain
yeah,
situations. That's
and I
enough
feel
to make the
like
bike reactive.
yes, so the reaction is almost like the bike is like packing, and then towards the end, boop, there you go, and then it flings you. So like back of the bike, constantly compressing that bike more than you probably should in that scenario, and then towards the last 4 to 3 whoops, boom, there's that that aggressive rebound kick. So
Yep.
I wonder if there's something to say about that. But also I notice Roxon, who's always great in the whoops, he seemed like he had a lot of control on the heat races and then leading into the main as well, where he could get really close to that right side of the whoops in the first both sets and ride right next to the tough blocks, no problem at all. Where I was like, man, he is threading that needle, because Dave Drakes would have been like, oh my God, no, please, oh geez,
Yeah,
But
riding
he
the
was-
edges that takes some confidence in whoops, especially. So if you guys enjoyed this podcast clip and you want to listen to full episodes, you can do so on Spotify and Apple Music. If you want to send in your own video submission, you can join us in the Moto Academy family inside of the Moto Academy app by just going to themotoacademy.com. That's also where you can sign up for a class. Okay, guys, see you next episode.